I want to tell you all a little story about a game I've had on my Steam account for a few years now. It's called Elite Dangerous. It's a space game. Well, a space pilot simulator of sorts. The ships are the main draw of it, really. You can think of it as a car racing simulator game, but in space, with spaceships, and you can also engage in combat, explore, mine, but don't really race for the most part. Glad I've cleared that up for you. Anyway, the key word to focus on here is simulator. When this label is given to a game, it implies it goes to some length to make the player feel that they are actually engaging in a simulation of something that would behave near exactly the same way as it would happen in reality, or the expectation of how things might behave and run if dealing with the currently non-existing scenarios like spaceships. Typically, you are given a large degree of responsibility and considerations of which you are to manage in the scenario. Direct and indirect factors which must be dealt with, alongside detailed control and options accessible for you as a player, allow one to be as thorough as the game wants you to be. There is a whole lot of nuance, and you need to pay attention, be willing to learn tough lessons and struggle through before you can gain some competency, assuming no prior experience. It sounds wonderful, right? Well, if you're so inclined, and if you're in the mood at the time, and if you actually have the time, then yes, sure, perhaps. The point is that when a game is labelled as a simulator, ignoring the indie joke games of course, then that label comes with a particular, well-established weight of expectation for the player. How a game given the simulation label presents that scenario and prepares the player is not a consistent one, however. And this is where we stumble onto Elite Dangerous and the experience it presents. The simulation takes place in a 1-to-1 scale of the Milky Way galaxy. That is a sincere sentence. The galaxy, as we know and assume it with our current knowledge of nothing, in the grand scheme of things, is fully simulated and explorable. Nearly every star of billions and billions may be travelled to and investigated. If you're anything like me, then that description alone is enough to get your full undivided attention and curiosity to learn more. It's bloody impressive, isn't it? The ambition of it to be made, the fact it can even be done to begin with, and that it is actually a game which exists right now with such a possibility and can be played. Not to mention whatever other gameplay aspects they've put on top of that fact. Commendable is an understatement. Good show, chaps. Good show. So I purchased the game, a good 5 to 6 years ago now, sporting a laptop that could barely run it at a stable 30 FPS on mid to low settings. And lacking a mouse, using the laptop trackpad for steering. My initial impressions weren't the best, through no fault of the game's, though. Still, it was enough for me to actually see that once struggling through the awful barely there training, bizarre key-binding placements and complete lack thereof of vital core functions, such as being able to charge your engine to jump between systems, I discover that you can indeed travel to any of the billions of stars displayed on your map. Quite smoothly, actually. In a ship that had lots of little detailed functions for you to fiddle with and optimize and needed to be considered and mastered with a rather high demand of you. Very impressive. But I could barely run the game. There was no real chance of getting into it as it was meant to be experienced. Still, flying in supercruise next to a poorly rendered sun at 20 FPS and marveling at how seamlessly the distant stars around me morphed into gigantic planets as I approached while I barely managed to understand how to control my ship and its seemingly millions of functions left a big impression. But I knew playing on my rubbish computer is tantamount to a betrayal of the experience it could offer and to the effort put into that experience by the developers. Plus, it would only frustrate me. So I gave up playing. A couple of years being beholden to slave driving of our corporate overlords, rewarded via salaried pay that encourages nothing but the worst and absolute minimum of effort from you because you're paid the same regardless of your effort. Later, the never-ending bombardment of encouraging ravenous greed and materialism from society at all angles allowed me the motivation and numbers to upgrade my computer. I hadn't played Elite since that first encounter, or thought about it much, but despite this, it was the first game I thought to reinstall and try with my new equipment. Beautiful, magnificent, with all graphic settings now maxed, the whole presentation of the visuals, and especially sound, fantastic. Exactly what you would want from such a game. It all seemed to be crafted with such a level of care and respect and polished to a mirror shine that with every new little experience I had a big grin on my face. Docking at stations and their incredible sound designs. The ship interiors and how the control panels integrate with the whole experience. Unique engine sounds per ship. Planetary landings and deploying your SRV, changing the atmosphere and feeling of the game into something wholly unique from flying. The visual sleekness of combat.
Nice work, Commander. Keep it up.
The depth of customization on your ship. Fiddling with and optimizing your ship's settings. Not to mention a few other joys which had been around for a while, but I only discovered later on, which I'll talk about in due course. Immersion was without a doubt one of the main goals of this game, and in my opinion, they nailed it. It was all so lovely, and it still is. But I had no idea what I was supposed to do in this game. It just literally threw me into the galaxy without any direction or goals. At this point in my gaming life years ago, I wasn't used to this. I didn't like it at all. I had become accustomed to being tightly guided through and introduced to near all a game's workings step by step, usually via a direct narrative of sorts, before being allowed to have free rein. But not in Elite, no. Elite Dangerous at the time gave me the most rudimentary lesson on how to swim, before metaphorically dropping me into the middle of the ocean, from a helicopter, hundreds of feet in the air, while giving me a cursory wave and good luck as I fell, before flying off into the horizon never to be seen again. Well, a touch dramatic, but you get my point. It felt bewildering at the time compared to the tightly controlled train-track AAA endless dopamine express experiences the games industry had us all riding on and accustomed to back then. Nothing wrong with that, of course. In fact, I still tend to prefer a more guided approach overall. But you know, in retrospect, I really feel like there was, and still is to a lesser degree now, this iron-gripped, deliberate push toward shaping player psychology to only be accepting of a new experience if it was delivered in an already very familiar package which was set by the juggernauts of the industry. As if those very narrow set of standards are the be-all, end-all of how all games must present themselves, else it is immediately labelled a bad game, and never given a chance to prove itself to a now brainwashed and spoilt, impatient, closed-minded audience. Myself being a part of that audience. Deeply entrenched in it, actually. Or maybe it was just myself. Digressions aside, it was this lack of hand-holding that saw me wander aimlessly in the galaxy, barely scraping by on poorly paying odd jobs, mostly combat and bounty hunting missions, of course, having no idea why I existed within the galaxy and what kind of goals I should be working toward. On top of that, everything took so long to do. Jumping from system to system, docking at stations, tracking mission targets, flying to and fro was a case of actually having to make your way there over significant chunks of time compared to other games. This, combined with a sense of being truly directionless and lost for purpose, began to quickly wear my patience and enthusiasm down. I was desperate for the game to give me meaning for existing in its universe, to tell me how I can have an effect on it, or what is expected of me. Nope, Elite wasn't giving me anything. I desired so much to properly realize the game's potential. I had already been hooked by the incredible presentation and over-attention to detail, but Elite Dangerous seemed to have no interest in reeling me in. My motivation waned more, and I felt I had just not the patience to bother anymore. It seems to want so much of my time and attention. It wants me to make all the effort to find the potential enjoyment. No thank you, I thought. Life is already bewildering enough at the best of times, and I shouldn't be expected to expend so much time and energy. I played less and less. The whole thing started to feel too tedious and needlessly difficult the more I tried to grasp things. Then I stopped. Another 2 or so years passed by. The game sees incremental updates, and I reinstall randomly to scratch the itch, only to find myself repeating the same patterns of aimless wandering before getting bored and frustrated again. Oh, I was always still very impressed with the presentation, mind you. No matter how many times I played, the detail of it all always left a smile on my face. The game just wasn't for me. I needed it to tell me what to do. Since then, the introductory training for new players has been much improved. Some activities were revamped to add more complexity and engagement, mining and exploration being the 2 key ones. I never tried the new mining, but the exploration additions were, again, in keeping with the standard of the game's detail, very cool and appreciated. The same cycle repeated itself for me, however. Skip to the present times of writing this script, or a little before, rather, and I found myself fallen in love with this game. For everything that it is and offers now, which I've come to personally find is more than the sum of its parts. I'll tell you how. It came down to 2 key points, one of which naturally led to the other, allowing this emergence to happen. First, I was finally bothering to go and try mining for the first time in all these years. On social media for the game, mining had grown to become the #1 means of earning huge amounts of money quickly and easily. Lots of information had become available on how to do that. So I did. After a little fumbling around, I secured a cargo hold worth around 60 million credits. But it was only worth that much because I relented and used a third-party website to find a station that was buying the cargo for such a price. The in-game tools, as I understood them, would not allow this. Done. 60-ish million in my bank. Not too shabby. An enormous amount by new player standards, and a decent amount to have for the standards of the game. And this comes after years of barely scraping together a few million from other activities, mainly combat. Oh, that was actually quite enjoyable, and it's made a significant difference to my in-game experience. Let's do that again. I thought to myself. Another trip of haphazard mining, over 100 million in my bank, made more impactful after narrowly escaping a hostile player interdiction on the way. This is where point 2 of my shift in attitude toward the game began to emerge and click into place. I felt that I had done and achieved something meaningful and impactful for my existence as a commander, something that made a real difference to my in-game standing, because now, with this money in the bank, I had some serious freedom of possibilities opened up to me. Travelling in Elite can be a bit of a pain in the bum, because the lower-tier ships don't possess much jump range, and getting the most from your time playing involves travelling between systems and discovering opportunities to investigate. Pre-marked points of interest seem impossibly far away, and already demanded prerequisites of your equipment capabilities that also felt incredibly distant. Want to unlock the means to upgrade your jump range? First, make a long and tedious journey to the appropriate specialist who will then tell you they want an item to unlock their services. Okay, where can the item be found? No idea. Does the game tell you somehow? Not to my knowledge. Check online. Ah, it's found here. Okay, let's just plot a course into the galaxy map and triple or quadruple the distance of the original journey to the engineer to upgrade your equipment. One way. Yeah, no. I need to go and eat. But now I had the funds to make an enormous upgrade that once seemed so distant. Purchase that explorer ship with triple jump range for several million credits? No problem. Upgrade and customize the ship for several million more so that my quality of life and jump range are further improved? No problem. Why not throw in some optional utilities to take advantage of any emergent situations or discoveries? I've got the money. Why not? The actual real game and its possibilities started to feel within reach. I was excited. My previous mental defenses and anxiety were unraveling and letting go. I was beginning to accept and understand what this experience is. The fundamental point of all this, though, and why it was such a turning point, was that I, very, very slowly, came to this result almost entirely of my own agency. The system of billions and the rings I chose to scan for mining spots, how I mined, the materials I chose to keep, the ship and the equipment I used, the station of thousands I chose to buy a ship and modules at, the searching of the relevant information to achieve my new goal of unlocking more possibilities. All of it done entirely of my own will and initiative, without any prompt or hand-holding from the game, none of it predetermined and static. The game's job was only to put me in space as a commander of my own ship and provide a galaxy with a decent amount of logical things to do, then make that believable and immersive in presentation and some gameplay. Everything else, though, the hows, when, what, why, that was my call. I'm a big boy, after all, right? An independent space pilot with the entire galaxy at my disposal. Being drip-fed how I should go through it and what to expect would run counter to that ultimate goal of immersion. When all this clicked into place, I experienced a feeling of freedom and liberation from this game that I had never felt in any other experience prior. That's it. I started to fall in love. There is a parallel to be drawn with real-life economics, of course. The rich get richer. Wealth equals options. Options and adequate knowledge and good sense can equal more wealth. It's now exciting to consider the possibilities opened up to me that I may engage with, or not, at such a large degree of comfort and security within the game. Now here's the part where others who have plenty of experience with Elite Dangerous will jump in to mention how there isn't much to actually do in the game, though. That beyond the combat, the other activities are fairly shallow and unimpactful. It's a solid argument, without a doubt. Take planetary landings and exploration, for example. It's all pretty barren. The landable planets have almost nothing to do on them. You know, the vast majority of the time there will be no points of interest or particularly unique terrain. When they do have a point of interest, it will be of the very small handful in the game you see copy-pasted elsewhere. There is a genuine grievance to be had as an explorer wishing to continue the spirit of exploration when you know it's extremely likely there is nothing new ever to be found. The same criticism can and is levelled at other activities in the game. But you know what, though? I think it's fine. Great, even. Why? Well, media technology has been advancing rather rapidly since moving into the 21st century, wouldn't you say? If we're able to jump back even a mere 10 years, it's quite staggering just how much the possibilities in gaming have developed, especially with the prominence of online connectivity and the avenues this opens up. As a result of this rapidity, we as consumers and players have barely had the time to breathe or digest or even notice many of the possibilities in one stage of a development life cycle, before being hastily pulled along to the next trending stage of advancement, usually visual, mostly, with little thought to look back at what's being left behind. Still dizzy and hazy from our last ride, we're ushered into a new room by the developers and publishers. We're confronted by images and sounds that penetrate straight through our now soft and mushy conscience. They flash hurriedly in front of our eyes, telling us what the next things are to be excited about and what expectations we should now adopt accordingly. We get more and more ravenous for the constant stream of varying stimulations that guide us by the well-calculated hand, with less and less time and patience remaining within ourselves for any method but this. Or maybe it's just me. Well, with that mindset, it's easy to view Elite Dangerous's opposition to this trend as hostile, unintuitive, inconsiderate, or just simply bad design. But let's jump off the ride for just a moment. Blink and have a quick look at what's around us. There's the ability to explore a 1-to-1 scale galaxy for starters. That's okay, right? Quite a reasonable achievement to allow us the option to even consider indulging the fantasy of travelling amongst the stars to that extent, especially for those more exploration-inclined individuals. To top that off, we can then seamlessly fly onto various planets, mostly barren ones, as prior mentioned, granted, hop into a little buggy with jump jets and zoom around according to the differing gravities, investigate some sites, pick up some resources, all done with the same fantastic high quality and attention to detail and polish previously mentioned. Drive back to your ship, take off, leave the planet seamlessly, choose wherever you want to go next and what you want to do. I think that's quite impressive, really. We can fly into any asteroid belt we find, any part of a planetary ring, drop in, do some mining or sightseeing or maneuvering practice. Might even find some valuable minerals you can refine and sell in the process. None of it in predetermined locations. All of it your own choosing. That's quite cool, isn't it? Ruins of a mysterious, ancient, advanced civilization to find, explore, and little puzzles to solve, unlocking some of their technology to further enhance your ship. A whole other, very well-crafted, unique alien race to encounter, complete with their own structures to explore and analyze, technology to discover, engage in combat with. We've a wide range of ships we can deeply customize to fulfill different roles as we see fit. We can smuggle illicit goods around thousands of markets or do honest trading. Hunt wanted criminals around the galaxy for bounties. Be a criminal ourselves. Sabotage giant vessels. Engage in political power play with various factions. Participate in large-scale battles between smaller warring factions to influence the outcome and who ultimately controls each sector. We can alter a market's demand of goods, deliver passengers around the galaxy for profit, investigate structures to find mini-stories through data logs, defend or attack said structures in more large-scale battles, scan each system to learn detailed information about each of its celestial bodies should we want to. If our ship has an extra seat or two, we can invite other players to come and join us and share in whatever activity we're doing. They can take control of various functions to work in tandem with yourself, offer more functionality and benefits, or take the burden of a responsibility away from you. Deploy themselves in a ship-launched fighter if you have them and fight alongside you. Or simply sit idle and tag along, maybe chatting to you as you go about your business. Does this need to be done? Does it have to have a huge effect on the results of gameplay? Maybe not, depending on your goal. But I think it's damn cool and impressive that in such an enormous open-ended game like this, you can share with other like-minded individuals so seamlessly what can often be a very solitary time and space. You might hear others say, "What's the point to that? What do you get except a small percentage of credits earned?" Well, everything I said is the point. You meet other people, assist them with their task in numerous ways, maybe chat with them, all done in a really immersive setting, in a full-scale recreation of our galaxy. The meaning comes from the journey, not the destination. A saying I think epitomizes the core of what Elite Dangerous is. Come on now, that's quite an achievement to have this option open to us. Being able to do all of that is very cool. Then there's the fleet carriers, the most recent large addition to the game. If you're rich enough, buy one. Store your armada of ships and equipment and resources and leap around the galaxy with your own personal mobile all-purpose station. Other players can land and travel with you if they want. You can have your own marketplace on the carrier, sell your own commodities, modules, and even ships to other players. Offer refueling, repair, not to mention jump huge distances to other stars in one go. I could go on and on about how that can fundamentally change how the whole game is experienced with enough player imagination. So I will. No, I jest. On top of all this, you can do everything mentioned with as many other players or friends as you wish. Just invite them along as part of your wing. Do it all together. I don't know. There are a lot of valid criticisms for what's lacking from some activities, especially unfinished narratives involving the aliens. But, again, there is still much here. Very, very cool experiences to be had, if not only for the sheer novelty and detail it's all presented in, spread across thousands of star systems among billions. I think the accomplishments of this game and the degree to which we can interact with it are already quite awesome. And when I say awesome, I mean the word with its original intent, something worthy of awe. As wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle, or something like that, is a term I've heard used to describe Elite over the years. If you think that way, then fair enough, I suppose, and perhaps an arguably justified criticism at the game's launch when most of the features I just doted over weren't in the game yet. I think this is where my original suggestion of us stopping to pay attention comes into play, though. Landable planets don't have much to do, bar settlement sabotage, stations to visit, resource gathering, ruins and small points of interest to explore. But is it reasonable to expect proper simulations of civilizations with a diverse range of deep and involved things the player can do spread across the span of an entire planet? Let alone simulate this for a large percentage of the millions, if not billions, of landable planets in the galaxy? If that were miraculously achieved on one planet, then with our limited computational power of the present day, it would undoubtedly then be copy-pasted across those other planets, quickly leading to a similar complaint that it's exactly the same thing to do on all of them, breaking the vital immersion factor the game succeeds at so well. Which would you rather have? For me, I'd prefer something, a single thing, to be done right and well, or not done at all, rather than be spread across multiple locations but be utterly mediocre and half-baked. Another complaint being that fleet carriers aren't directly flyable, or destructible, or could engage in combat. Okay, it would be lovely if they were, but considering the enormous prior-mentioned utility already on offer, and how they are usable as an outpost by other players if you allow them, buying ships, modules, carrying players around the galaxy and so on, To then expect such a dynamic element to be so robust, while considering its state must be tracked and maintained by the game world server at all times. Think about this. Thousands of fleet carriers, all able to alter so many other states and conditions of the game simulation at any time. And yet because we can't directly fly them around or fight with them, then they're worthless? Really? I think a bit of perspective and tempering of one's expectations and demands is owed toward Elite by now, at the very least. But for the reasons I mentioned before, I can't blame people either. We've been expertly conditioned over these years to stand still and wait, eyes wide and hands outstretched, palms facing upward, to have our experiences rationed to us in exact but consistent amounts. Otherwise we find ourselves paralyzed. We know nearly nothing else these days. The concept of DIY enjoyment with the tools to hand all but vanishing. Gaming not being the only area of life in which we've been conditioned to behave this way when we think about it, eh? So, once again, let's put things into perspective now that we're, for the moment, aware and looking around us. We know our current internet capabilities generally. We know our average computational power for consumer machines, and we've got a good idea of all that's on offer in Elite presently, and how seamlessly they've managed to tie these elements together, not to mention what else is to come in the future. With all this in mind, can we really expect something of this scale to also possess the intimate minutiae of complexity in its systems that allow for it to create a feeling of your own personal story that is interwoven with everything and everyone else to provide you a sense of meaning a la real life? Not yet we can't. I think there's plenty to appreciate here already, considering our limitations. And for me, this all comes back to how everything I experience in Elite, exciting or no, lucrative or no, lonely or no, is done entirely of my own volition, in a very, very cool way, thanks to the detail of it all. I can't put into accurate enough words how much I've come to appreciate the game for allowing me the space, pun intended, to gradually relearn how to take back control of my play experiences. Even though it took me years of baby steps, everything is how it should be. Barren planets bore you? Set up an SRV race with some associates on the surface. Have rules or prizes as you see fit, or fly and race through canyons in your ships. All the tools and space are there for you to do so. Don't have people to play with? Meet them. You make the effort. Use multi-crew to join their ship. Go to more populated systems with players and ask in the numerous chat channels how you might play together. You matchmake yourself. You do it. Plenty of tools are already in-game, and outside the game. Exploration feeling stale? Check the codex for reported space anomalies. Go and confirm them. See if you can do something others didn't. Has anyone tried using a mining laser on those strange organic space things before, for example? Maybe something will break off that could be collected. Maybe you'll be the first one to find this item in all the galaxy. Who knows what that may lead to if so? Are you bored of NPC bounty hunting? Well then hunt real players. Check the Galnet newsfeed at the stations for the local bounty report. Choose a commander, go to their last reported location, try to track and hunt them. Ask around if possible. If you find them, maybe try to lure them into a vulnerable position before you strike. Perhaps you can pretend to need help and catch them unaware. Maybe your devious plan to claim their bounty might take an hour or a day or a week as you lull them into a false sense of security before you strike. All the tools are there. This is what I mean about the success of this simulation. It allows you to act as you would like if you, and I mean you, the person, not you, the player, were really a space pilot. It's all up to you. I don't do those creative examples I mentioned, by the way, not yet. I'd like to if the opportunity came, and if I bothered to make the effort. And that's precisely what I've come to love and deeply appreciate about Elite. The fact that I know I can do those things, anytime, should I choose to. And, if I never do, that's not the game's failure or fault. It gives me plenty of options at any time to fulfill the fantasy. The end meaning of something is subjective to yourself, and that's yours and my responsibility to bear. So, that's how I learned to love this game. And I think there is certainly a lesson or two to be learned about being a bit more empathetic and appreciative towards what we already have and can do, considering our present limitations. Chances are quite high that you, I, and nearly everyone else who might watch and hear this video or even know of its existence will be long dead before humans may exist in the way this game portrays. To be able to enact even a tiny portion of that fantasy in my lifetime to the level of interactivity and novelty that Elite offers, not to mention what is still to come from this game and others, well, that's not bad at all. Wouldn't you say?